How's it going, everybody? This is Rusty here at FCP Euro, and today we're going to be doing a rear end mild overhaul on our B9 Audi S5. In today's video, we're going to be installing the H&R rear sway bar. This is a thicker rear sway bar than stock, which is going to give reduced body roll. If you're considering a little bit of extra performance on the rear end of your vehicle, the H&R rear sway bar is a perfect application for that. And now that we know what we're working with, let's show you some of the tools that we'll need to tackle the job. For today's DIY, you'll need everything you see in front of me on the table. We'll start with the impact gun, which you will need to remove some of the bolts underneath the vehicle. If you're laying on your back, you might not be able to get them out by hand, so I do highly suggest some sort of an impact gun to help you remove some of those fasteners. You also will need a pry bar to manipulate some of the bushings, as well as move things back into place when reassembling. We have a couple of 1/2-inch drive sockets in a 21mm as well as an 18mm, as well as a decent size or a couple of 1/2-inch extensions. For smaller sockets, you'll need a T25 bit, a 10mm triple square, a 12mm triple square, a 10mm socket, a 13mm socket, as well as a 16mm socket in varying lengths and depths, a couple of 3/8 extensions, along with a 3/8 ratchet. We have a 3/8 torque wrench here, as well as a 1/2-inch torque wrench here. You may find the 1/2-inch torque wrench may not get into some of the same spots as the 3/8. We have a torque marker, as well as a pocket screwdriver and a 90-degree pick for some of the small connectors. Any sort of flashlight will definitely be helpful. Series of long wrench from the 16mm, as well as a normal short wrench. The exhaust hanger pliers are not absolutely necessary, but it will prevent damage when removing the exhaust on any of the exhaust hangers. Optionally, we do have another small 3/8 impact driver, as well as a pole jack or a traditional floor jack. Now that you have all these tools accessible, let's start taking the car apart. There is a lot of trim panels we do have to remove to kind of gain access to everything. So we're going to start by removing the side panels here and here. It's a T25 as well as a 10mm plastic nut. So we'll just go ahead. So once you get these off the studs on the body, you can slide the plastic trim out from under it. Easier said than done on the lift. All right, there we go. So depending on where you put your jack stands or 2-post lift like we have, it may be a little bit difficult to remove these. And just remember, you gotta clear all the studs to get this safely off without cracking or bending or distorting it. We'll do the same thing over here. And now that we've got the front of these exposed, there is 2 more pieces of hardware underneath this trim panel. So let's go ahead and just remove 2 more 10mm on the back and pivot this down and out of the way. The series of bolts that hold these supports up, we are going to go ahead and use the triple square on the inside of that. And it is a 12mm triple square. So that fits a lot more secure. When I get this out, I'll show you the hex on the bolt is not very secure. You could definitely take it out with a 16, but it may round it. 15 doesn't fit on there, and the triple square fits in there quite well with no play. So definitely use a triple square to go ahead and remove these support braces. So now that we've got some of the rear hardware exposed and we've got some of these trim panels off, the next step in doing the rear diff mounts and subframe inserts is to remove the exhaust. Before so, we do need to remove this tunnel brace in order to lower the exhaust down. And if you guys are interested, we will have a full DIY on just this component as well. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the 4 triple squares here using a 10mm triple square. So before we go ahead and remove the exhaust, we have the tunnel brace removed. We still have clamps up here. There's a series of mounts and hangers we will have to release. So let's go ahead and get a pole jack or something else, as I'll need an assistant to help me lower this as well. You just want to support it gently as we start to remove the hangers. It may shift. So this is a pretty good central point. We have a hanger here, and then there's one on each tip, and then we'll get to the clamps at the end of this. All right, so before we remove the exhaust, we do want to take off the connectors on the exhaust valves. They are rather difficult. They are upside down, and there is a locking tab in the center of the connector. So you need to remove the locking tab first, pulling it back, and there's a lot of rocks and debris stuck in the connector, so you may need a little compressed air or some brake cleaner. You may even need a mirror to see upside down to see if the connector is disengaging, which it doesn't feel like it is. Feels like it's fighting me. Yep. So I'll show the GoPro here. There is a locking tab that you need to release. You can see it's fully disengaged. When it's connected to the exhaust. It will be recessed into that connector there, and you kind of need to pull on both outsides of the tab to get that to come back. And again, it is rather difficult when there's some dirt and debris in there, so you may need to spray some brake clean and or compressed air to get that to release. Now that that one's taken care of, let's go do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Now that we've got the rear exhaust valves disconnected, we can move on towards the hangers. You have the two hangers with 13 millimeters in the rear. We have one more additional hanger in the center. We've already released one of the other hangers with the tunnel brace, and then we still have the midsection connected with the clamps. So we'll start on the rear and get the 13 millimeters released from the hangers and move our way up towards the front of the car. As you can see, the 13 millimeters for the hangers are covered in dirt and grime, so you may want to clean it off first. We're gonna see if we can just get the socket on there. Yep. Now we're gonna repeat the same process on the opposite side with a 13 millimeter up here. All right, we've got the rear taken care of. Now we're off to the center hanger here. This one's not bolted. It is just a welded hanger on the subframe and a welded hanger on the mid-pipe here. So you could use a screwdriver or a pry bar. We do have this exhaust hanger release tool. Makes the job quite simple. That just kind of pushes that off. All right, get that one up, kind of spin it up and out of the way. Now the exhaust is fairly loose. All right, so with all the exhaust released, we're just gonna loosen these hangers real quick. We're not gonna slide them off all the way because I just have a central point here. I'm gonna need to get the camera guy to get his hands dirty with me. All right, so just to give ourselves a little more clearance, just make sure those hangers aren't gonna snag anything. I'm just gonna tip them down towards me a little bit. We're just gonna drop the exhaust down here slightly. That way we can lift it off the pull jack. The only tool that you're gonna need in order to remove these rear aero plates will be a pocket screwdriver. There is a series of clips in the back. You just wanna gently pry them in, pulling down to get that to disengage. And the same thing on the other side. Careful not to break the tabs. And then you're gonna roll the tab over the bar, release one side, and it should pivot down and away. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. We're going to start by releasing the two sway bar links, and then we'll get to the triple squares that hold it onto the subframe before bringing it down and out of the car. So with a 16 millimeter wrench, counter holding the bolt through the sway bar as well as the link, and then you're going to want a deep socket to get the 16 millimeter nut off of the sway bar. You'll notice when you start to release this, the sway bar may pick up in height. That is because the bushing was torqued at ride height, meaning that the spring tension is not at full droop here, or the suspension is not at full droop. When you go to tighten this back up, you do want to make sure that either you have the springs compressed with a floor jack, or you have the vehicle back on the ground, possibly with ramps on the back. That way we make sure that we set all these bushings at ride height. Let's go ahead and continue to release this one. All right, you may need to push up or pull down on the sway bar in order to get that bolt to release. You don't want to get it out all the way just yet. We'll just leave that kind of sitting like that, and we'll make our way to the other side. Now we're going to want to take out these 12 millimeter triple squares, and this is why we left the bolts in here, so that when you get these out, it'll kind of hang there, suspended by the bolts that are holding it into the sway bar links. We're just going to pivot this down and away in a second here, off this trim panel. We can push the bolts out. Get the sway bar down and out of the way. Well, we're going to be installing some upgraded links here. We've got the driver's side out. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on the passenger side. Again, with a 16 millimeter, I do have a long ratchet here to get this bolt broken free. And you're going to be fighting the flexing of that bushing. Taking out the link with the bolt. We'll just put the nut back on there so we remember which way the bolt goes through. You want to make sure that the bolt head is facing towards the front of the car and the nut goes towards the back on installation. Now that we have our sway bar out, we have the factory sway bar here. You can see it's visibly larger. We are going to be able to retain the stock bushing brackets. However, we are going to be swapping in new bushings. So while you have the old sway bar out and on the bench, we're just going to pop off the old bushings, There is a couple of little tabs in here you may have to pry on, but you should be able to just pry these off of the old bushings. All right, once you release the tabs, you'll see the bushing will split into two. There's a tab on either side that you're kind of fighting to get out of this groove here on either side. So once you get that released, set your bushing bracket off. We don't need the old bushings. Move on to the other side. And again, you're gonna fight it a little bit. A series of getting underneath and in between the bushing and the bracket. All right, once you get those clips released, again, those things will fight you. Now we have our old bushings and our old bar. We can put this off to the side. We're not gonna be using that. With the new bushing, you do have a split design on the top. You can see that there. That's gonna be directly underneath the bracket. So we're just gonna put these on, slide these over. We're gonna use a little bit of grease from our subframe inserts. All right, get those around that. You don't need any grease on the inside. They do have this cotton webbing on the inside that's gonna keep any noise or squeaking, squealing, rattling down. So we're just gonna put a little grease on the outside to fit the bracket bushings, but we'll just go ahead and split these and fit them on the bar. All right. So just for ease of installation, we're gonna apply a small amount of polyurethane grease so that we can slip these bushings down into the brackets. Make sure you get a little bit on those tabs. Make it easier to insert those into the brackets. All right, now we're able to resecure our brackets. There is no real orientation of these. They are symmetrical. So you just want to slide that in so that you can see this one's not totally engaged here. The one on the opposite side, the tab is fully engaged, so we may need to push this one in a little bit. There we go. Just want to make sure both sides of that bushing are engaged into the bracket, similar to the difficulties you saw upon removing them. You just want to make sure you firmly press those in. All right. After some careful massaging, we were able to get all those tabs located correctly. I'm just going to put another small dab of grease on the bottom before we install this into the subframe. All right, now we're ready to fit the bar. So we've got our brackets fitted, our bushings are greased, and I just line everything up. It is kind of an awkward shape, so you want to make sure you have it oriented right. We're just going to start a couple of these bolts by hand, and we are using new hardware for these because they are torque to yield, everybody's favorite. You may have to slide the bushings slightly to get the holes to line up. All right, we got two of them held up in there. And we're just going to quickly zip these up into place. So I'm just going to cinch these bolts up and push the brackets onto the sway bar. Then I'm going to back them off a couple turns. Now that we've found a nice home for the new bushings in the old brackets, we can start installing our links. All right, so we do have a new set of links from Lem 4-door, and we're going to go ahead and install these. I'm going to put the bolt in the top here and feed it into the eyelet in the control arm, and then the bottom bolt will go through the link and come back toward the center of the car. And now that we have our hardware in, we can put the nuts on and do the same to the other side. Before you tighten anything up, we will want to get the vehicle to ride height. So we did discuss that in the beginning, whether you're going to lower the vehicle back down on all four or just compress the suspension. You'll notice that it will be a little bit difficult to compress just the rear by itself, so we will be putting the vehicle back on all four. We can go ahead and run these bolts just till they kiss and then back them off a little bit so that we keep the bushings relaxed before we torque everything to spec. All right, I'm just gonna back that off just a hair as I did bottom that out. I just want everything to kind of spin together. So that's still pretty loose. That should find its home once we compress the suspension. Then we'll torque those down so that we don't prematurely wear any of the sway bar link bushings or the bushing in that upper control arm. Now that we've got this sway bar link loosely fitted, nothing's torqued down and everything's still kind of in a relaxed state, we are going to go ahead and install the other side off camera. It is the exact same here, so there's no need to show it, but I just want to make mention that we're not going to torque anything until we come back and catch you guys for the ride height check. So we'll be right back. All right, now that we have the vehicle back down at ride height, we're ready to start torquing these bushings. And we've just snugged them up loosely, making sure that they're still able to manipulate a little bit and settle into their home before we do that final torque. So now we're going to do a 40 Newton meter plus 180 degree turn. There we go on the 40. There we go. Now we've done a full 180 degree turn on the fastener. The top one is going to be much more difficult, so what we're probably going to do is torque it to the 40 Newton meter first position, and then probably use 2 wrenches to do the final 180 degrees after we mark it and follow that mark around 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and do that one now. Just want to get to that 40, and we did. Now you take a torque marker, and at the very bottom of the bolt or the top, whichever you prefer, just make a mark on the bolt, not on the washer. This mark right here in the bottom of the bolt should be at the 12 o'clock position when we're done. Gonna use a nice long 16 to give us some good leverage. And you can see how much pressure we're putting on this bolt as well. You do not want to reuse these to get them actually to the factory spec. It is quite tight. As you can see, we've made about a 180 degree turn on there. So we now need to do the same thing on the other side and after we catch our breath. It has to go forward a little, I think. There we go. All right, second. That should be all safe. We can let that sit for a second. Now that we have the exhaust slipped into the front clamps, we're just going to tighten up these 13 millimeter bolts that we loosely fitted. We'll get those torqued down in a second, making sure that our tips are still in the same place. All right, now that we have the front and back of the exhaust loosely fitted, we do have 2 more hangers here in the middle. This one will be secured by the tunnel brace, but we're just going to fit this one by the rear sway bar real quick. So if you're having any difficulty trying to fit any of these hangers, and could use a little bit of silicone, could use a little bit of Vaseline, something to push that shaft through the bushing may be helpful depending on how dry or brittle your bushing is. You may want to consider replacement, but these are pretty durable and you can usually reuse them. You do want to make sure everything is kind of in a relaxed state. You don't want to tighten these clamps all the way or tighten your hangers. You want to make sure everything is kind of fitted all together so you don't have anything stressing each other. So you'll notice behind me, I do have a pull jack here to support the exhaust slightly, just to get the exhaust hanger in a fashion that it kind of sits flush against the floor with no tension on it. That way when we install the hardware, it is much easier. We are going to be using some new hardware for these, and there's an 8mm Allen. We're just going to loosely fit everything first, make sure it's all squared up. It's definitely easier to put these in using the bit. It is going to be a little difficult as the bolt starts to go in, getting into that anodized bracket, as they are flush mounted in there. So I can leave that one hanging there. Get ready to install our other one. And again, having the exhaust supported by a jack or the pull jack like we have has made lining up this bracket much easier as opposed to pushing this up and trying to line it all up together. Now we're going to be torquing these 8mm Allens to 45 Newton meters. If you were just reinstalling the factory brace, the triple square that we removed would be at 55 Newton meters. So I just wanted to make that little note. All right. All right, now that we have our new tunnel brace or the factory tunnel brace back installed, we can re-secure our exhaust clamps as well as torque our rear exhaust hangers. Then we can continue on with the cross bracing as well as some of the underbody panels that we took off. All right, again, it's a 13mm, tightening it up to 20 Newton meters. And the same thing on the other side. Now that both of the hangers are refitted, we can continue on and reconnect our exhaust flaps. Before we do that, I just want to make sure that these connectors are reset and these gray tabs are pulled back. You won't be able to engage the connector without that being recessed back, and it will probably throw a check engine light. So make sure these gray tabs are further back before you re-engage that connector. And when you push it on, you want to push by the housing, not by that gray tab. Make sure it locks on, give it a little tug before pushing that locking tab in. And now do the same thing on the other side. Once you've got your connector cleaned out and it can be quickly and easily installed back into the motor, we'll proceed as such. And make sure that engages, give it a little tug, and then push the lock in to fully engage that as well, and then giving it another tug once more. Now our exhaust is almost all the way fitted. We're going to go back up towards the front and fit our exhaust clamps, finalizing the fitment of the exhaust so we can move forward with the rest. Generally, you'll have like a little soot mark or a witness mark, you can call it. So we're going to slide it forward. You can see a witness mark here. Slide it back until that witness mark, making sure the exhaust is installed in a somewhat relaxed position, turning our clamps up and out of the way to make sure that they're not rubbing any of the heat shielding or pointed down and dragging on the ground. On the passenger side, you are going to get fairly close to the heat shield, so as you tighten that up, you do want to make sure that it is slightly down at an angle, and we'll match that one on this side as well. And we're going to torque these to 23 Newton meters, and we'll check the vehicle once it's started up, make sure these don't have any leaks. Obviously, we've reused these a couple of times, so the 23 Newton meter torque spec may have to go over that a little bit to make sure that these are sealed properly. Now our exhaust is reinstalled. Now it might not be a bad idea to start the vehicle up and make sure everything is clearanced okay, but we're just going to continue with the DIY reinstalling the X braces as well as the underbody panels. Before we get started installing the under supports for the rear suspension, I do want to make note that the one that has a slight dimple here is going to be the driver's side. This one is going to go on first, and the passenger side actually goes over at this dimple, crossing it over underneath the spare tire. So we're going to go ahead and start loosely fitting these fasteners and get everything squared up. So we're going to start by putting all the ones in here, getting this one firmly placed up against the body before torquing it down and before installing the passenger side. Because again, the passenger side goes over this one, so you want to get this one somewhat secured before installing the other side. I would like to note that these bolts for these X braces on the factory suspension are torque to yield. The torque setting is 50 Newton meters plus 90 degrees. We're only going to do the 50 Newton meters because we will have these off in a later DIY. So be sure to subscribe for future DIYs on this vehicle and many others more. Again, we're just going to do a quick 50. We're not going to do the final 90 as they do go into the body. Again, now normally you would do a 90 degree on all of those bolts if you had new hardware, but we're just going to leave these torqued at 50 because we are going to be removing these in the future. So now that we've fitted our X bracing, we can go ahead and start putting our finishing panels on. We're just going to reinstall this little spare tire cover. Literally just want to get that tightened up and do like a quarter turn on it. And now we can move forward to the side panels under here. Slipping it under the front panel here, we just have a couple T25 screws holding this one on. And the rest of them are just a couple of plastic screws, which we'll get with a 10 mil here. All right, now just like the other side, we're just going to fit this up. And last but not least, if you did have them or have to remove them, we do have these little toe arms that made it a lot easier for getting some of the torque specs down on the sway bar, as well as removing the subframe inserts. The trailing end is going to go on first and then pop this up while making sure that the clip kind of wraps around that toe arm there. Now, just like the other side, you're going to tip this in, kind of expanding those clips, giving you the clearance you need to get past the X brace. While you're pushing this up, make sure to get the clip out of the way and push these tabs past that bushing, and then come back around, engage this clip, and make sure both of those little tabs expand outwards. Give everything a once over, make sure you didn't miss anything. Make sure everything is clearanced well before lowering the car down. All right, now that pretty much takes care of it. We've successfully installed our H&R rear sway bar. We've torqued everything to spec, and now we're ready to go out and enjoy the car. So we hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if so, please hit that like button. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them in the comment section below. And we'll have plenty more DIYs on this vehicle and many others like it, so please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.